Hi there, I'm Coach John Berry, founder of Basketball Coaching Academy, as well as Youth Hoops basketball camps and clinics. Today I'm going to talk with you about how can you as a basketball coach run an effective practice. Well, when you start talking about running effective practices, there's really 5 different sections you need to include. The first is you have to warm up your players. The second part of it deals with skill development. Then we're going to go into what we call team strategy. Afterwards, we then let them scrimmage, or we let them play in what we call small-sided games. And last but not least, we have you want to cool them down. Let's take it back to the top here. I'm assuming as a coach, you're either going to have a 60-minute practice or a 90-minute practice. It could go longer than that as well. You probably can go an hour and 45 minutes. You can even go all the way up to 2 hours, but be careful with 2 hours because the longer that practice goes, the higher the probability you're going to burn your players out. So if you look at those 5 sections, starting with warm-up, you don't want to skip this. You don't want to skip this at all. This is the area of practice where you develop the kids' athleticism, their balance, their coordination. You're properly making sure that their body is warmed up. Because let's face it, when they start playing in practice, they start playing basketball, there's a lot of quick movements, there's a lot of torquing type actions, and if your body isn't properly warmed up, then guess what? Then you increase the chances of that kid hurting themselves. Number 2, skill development. Now, in my view, skill development is the most important thing you can do in practice. You want to help the kid learn skills. And not only that, you want to teach the kids when to use those skills. Too many times, us as coaches, we'll teach a kid a technique, but we don't show them how to apply it. So here's something that I would suggest to you. When you teach a kid a skill, then take another 2 or 3 minutes to show them how to apply it. Put a dummy defender in front of them and have the defensive person do a specific thing, or vice versa if you're working on defense. Now, when you deal with skill development, there's really 5 different areas you can focus in on. My favorite is ball handling, and ball handling includes dribbling and passing. The second part of skill development deals with shooting. Now, when you work with this shooting, make sure you focus in on shot mechanics and form. The third thing under skill development you can focus in on is what we call offensive moves. Let's face it, if you have a team of players who is capable of breaking down the player in front of them, man, your offense is going to run a lot smoother. Well, that's what offensive moves does. And then we have the next skill development, which happens to be defense. You got to spend time on this. Defense is what's going to keep you in the game in the event that your offense isn't clicking. Or if you don't have a very skilled team, guess what? The defense is going to give you an opportunity to compete and win a lot of games you're not supposed to win. And then the last thing that I would focus in on is inside play and rebounding. Players must know how to bump and grind. As they get further and further into their basketball career or their journey, the game is going to get physical. And if they don't know how to maneuver their body, get low, take a hit, know how to fall, go up and grab a rebound, then you're not going to be as effective. The next section of basketball practice should focus in on team strategy. Now, this is the area where you start teaching them offensive sets, defensive sets, teach them how to break a press, teach them how to press, teach them things like how to inbound the basketball. But I should say this. I wouldn't go crazy here. Because if you spend most of your time teaching kids what to do and what area to run to on the floor, and you give them all of these choreographed motions, guess what? They're going to be confused and they're going to play a step slower. They're not going to play as reactive. So this is one of the areas that I would suggest to you where, yes, go ahead and work on it, but don't go overboard here. You know, have a specific thing that you want to teach them every single practice, right? And then move on, because this is not what's going to give you the biggest payoff. The next thing that I would focus in on in practice deals with the scrimmaging or the small-sided games. The scrimmaging is really a very important piece because this is where the kid gets an opportunity to actually use the things that you taught the kid. Now, when you scrimmage, it can be 5-on-5. But let's say, for instance, a kid is developing or you're trying to get a better feel for where a kid is. Guess what? You can play what we call small-sided games. So what's a small-sided game? A small-sided game could be 1-on-1. It can be a 2-on-2. It can be 3-on-3. It can be 4-on-4. Right? And by doing that, you give the kid more options to touch the ball. There's more space on the floor, for the kid, to maneuver. The other thing that it does is it gives the kid more opportunities to shoot the ball. And oftentimes when the game is smaller or there's not as many players on the floor, you can really see innately what the kid is good at. But if you put them in a situation where it's 5-on-5, sometimes if they're not used to that, they get sort of lost in the sauce. And you may get a false impression as to what they can do. I'll tell you this quick story. I've had a number of kids play with me in the past where they've come to practices, and because I had 5-on-5 and I looked at all of the players in its totality, I didn't really get a really good look at a certain player. And then one day I happened to run across a kid play on the playground, and I just saw him playing free. It was 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and I couldn't believe that was the kid that was on my team. Well, guess what? The kid was able to play free because the game had scaled down. And had I had saw how he was playing in that particular setting, I could have leveraged off of that, and I could have facilitated his integration into the 5-on-5 sets. So don't be afraid of using small-sided games. In fact, when you are scrimmaging in your practice, leverage and have like 3-4 games going on at the same time. Have one game over here where it's 3-on-3, another over here where it might be 2-on-2, and have another game where it's 1-on-1. And you can kind of watch and see what all of the players are doing. And last but not least, when you are running a basketball practice, is cooling down. Now, this may not sound like much, but let me tell you, it's really, really, really important. You want to give your kids an opportunity for their bodies to cool down. Right? And this is important, right? Because their bodies are kind of amped up, and they're sweating, and all of a sudden you go from 100 to 0 just like that. If the kid's body may not react properly to that. So what do you do to cool the kid's body down? Well, you just simply have them jog up the court, walk back down, jog up the court, walk back down. You want to cool them down. You want to also do some basic static stretching. Have them go right over left and touch their toes. Have them sit down and cross their legs and turn, their torso so they can stretch their backs. The other good thing about cooling down is this. As you're cooling a kid down, you can talk to the players. You can talk to them about today's practice. You can talk to them about the game that you're going to play tomorrow. You can critique and compliment players on the great job that they may have done in practice. Use this as an opportunity to talk with the players. Believe it or not, this is when more binding happens, right? So now all of a sudden you have a better relationship with a player or the team as a whole, or maybe one of the players on your team, they open up and they start talking as well. So don't shortchange cooling down. So in summary, we talked about these 5 things: warm up, skill development, team strategy, scrimmaging or small-sided games, as well as cooling down. If your practice is 60 minutes, allocate times appropriately, with most of the time going to skill development. You'll also do the same thing relative to if the practice was 90 minutes. That being said, I'd like to say goodbye, and until next time, cheers.